Hello guys, I am at the Signal Live. My real name is Cristina Gomez and I am a freelance graphic designer and illustrator, and I'm here to explain you how to work with Clip Studio Paint in order to achieve an amazing illustration for your Instagram account. For doing that, I'm going to explain you some steps and some tools that I use, and also my painting process in order to achieve this effect. We're going to know how to use the transfer tool, how to fill out the base colors, and also how to work with the layers to achieve the lining effects that we want. Maybe you think this is like a very difficult thing to follow, but the truth is that if you keep watching this video, you're going to have all the knowledge to apply to your own illustration. The first thing we're going to talk about is the canvas size. This is something that people ask me a lot, so I'm going to show you which canvas size I'm using. We create a new canvas and we're going to set up to 4000 per 4000 size in pixels. Also for the resolution, I'm going to use 300 dpi because we're going to use that on Instagram and also for printing. We can save or preset if we want, and by clicking this icon and then click OK, and it will be saved for another time. If we want a less resolution file, we change the resolution here. We're going to set up to 72 dpi, and this resolution is enough for website. Once we have set up the canvas, next step is the sketching part. As you see, I have the rough sketch done. So what I'm doing here is sketching in a new layer with the design pencil. I found this pencil super nice for sketching. I think I tried all of them that comes for the presets of Clip Studio Paint, and this is one of my favorites with the real pencil. I mean, these two are like enough texture for me because I love to draw with texture pencil. Also, the options they came with helps you to create like more dynamic pencil to sketch it, so it works very nice. And also during my sketching process, I use the mesh transformation tool and also the flip horizontal tool. Both helps me a lot to achieve the results that I want for my sketch, because sometimes when I draw, I see that I am missing something, or some elements are misplaced, like maybe one eye higher than the other. So these tools helps me to change these elements and make my sketch look even better. Now it's time to start painting or illustration. For the painting process is large and have a lot of steps. I divided in different areas so it's simpler to understand what we are going to do in the different stages. So first one is going to be the ink process, and the second one is going to be the base color process. Once we have these things, that I think this 1/3 of the illustration, it's time to start adding some details and soft shadows and soft lights, and then start working with the layers to make all the lining effect. For doing the inking, I decided to work with the vector layer instead of the pixel ones, and this is because working with vectors for the inking, I think it's faster. Later I'm going to show you some advantage of using that. This time I decided to use the mapping pen instead of the G pen or the real G pen, basically because it is more rounded and it didn't have like these rough edges like the other two ones. At least the real G pen, I think it's more texturized. And this is basically because in terms of filling options and selections, I think for my own taste, for sure, I like more these neat edges for the ink part. And also it works so well with the pen pressure, and you can achieve like more line effects with and play with the thickness of the lines. And this is very important in terms of illustration because playing with different type of thickness makes your illustration richer. And I think this pen is amazing for use, and I'm going to use it on the future for sure. For cleanup or lines, as I said before, if you work with the vector layer, you're going to see super useful. Use the vector eraser because with a simple stroke, you are going to erase only the line that you want to erase. And this is so important because in my case, when it's time to clean up my inking, I always mess up the lines because I start erasing with the normal eraser, and then some little parts of the lines are erased. And with this vector eraser, I found that it's so precise that helps me a lot in this stage. Creating a color palette is super easy in Clip Studio Paint. The only tool you have to use is the eyedropper and grab the colors from your reference photos and put them on your new color palette. Now it's time to start working with the base color. The first thing I do is create a new base color shape. In this case, I'm using the selection tool to select all the inner area, including the inkjet part, and fill it with my first base color, that it's going to be the skin color. We have to check up that we don't miss any blanks. For painting, I'm going to show you two different ways of doing that. Both are super faster, but it's true that the second one, it's going to be like, you have to be more careful because you can have more blanks, and you have to paint over them to make your color blocking like solid. And the first one, I am using the paint unfilled area. So what I do is make all the edges to clarify the area I'm going to paint. And with this tool, it paints, you have seen, super fast. Now I'm checking all the blanks in case I have it. And for this one, I am not using any references to other layers or using a reference layer or specific layer. And for the second one, that is the fill option, what I do is set up my sketch layer as reference. So when you use the fill tool, they automatically recognizes your lines from the reference layer that you set up. It can be the sketch or the ink layer. So you're going to see that it's so easy and so fast to paint all the elements of your illustration. As you can see, I work with layers, so I paint each element that I'm using in individual ones, and this is so useful for me because if I have to change the color because it didn't match or it didn't convince, it's so easy to change only this area of color. We did the same for all the rest of elements we have to paint, and we're going to be back for the next step. now that we have our base color done, it's time to start adding some life to our illustration and making an illustration more vivid and more light, or with more life. It's necessary to start adding details and textures and shadows, and there's a lot of things to do. For doing that, I'm using the oil paint brush that comes with Clip Studio Paint. I think this is an amazing brush to use. You can do a lot of things with the settings. You can set up the hardness, the density of paint, the amount of paint, and by changing each one of these parameters, you're going to find that your brush is going to slightly change and fit your technique or your final style so well. The first thing I do is set up the shadow, the shadow layer for my illustration. I'm blending some areas because I love to have these two textures, like the soft texture and the hard texture. Not in all the areas, only at some points. And I'm using the airbrush to make some blush for my girl. So in this case, I am using the soft brush because I want this blush be like so soft. So I don't want to make like hard rounded blush. Also, I'm trying colors, so and I'm playing with the blending modes. You are seeing like I am using clipping mask. I'm going to talk about the layer things later on, but now you see that I'm using I'm changing the blending modes for the layers to make the color more similar or that fits better with my base color. Basically, we're going to repeat the same system for doing the shadows in all the elements we have. So in a little resume about the technique, what I'm doing is painting the shadows over each element. So I create a new layer over my base color. For example, in this case is the skin, and we have to do the same with the hair and the clothes. And over this, I'm using like a lilac color, and I set up, I put lower opacity and then play with the blending modes to make like more suitable for the eyes. For making these freckles, I use the airbrush. I have to say that I found super funny work with this airbrush tool because you can adjust the number of particles you put on, like on each stroke, and also you can say if you want it bigger, smaller. So this is super fun to work with. Also, it's super customizable for your needs, and I think the airbrush tool, it's very useful for doing this type of freckles, and you're not going to need any other third part brush for doing this step. Also, at that point, I changed the shadows, the skin shadows layer, because I discovered the watercolor brush, and I found that the effect on the texture that this watercolor, a smooth watercolor, it's the name, looks better for the shadows. And then I decided to erase what I had and redo it with this new brush. The last thing I'm doing is adding the shadows for the clothes with this smooth watercolor brush, as I said. And I decided to add some texture to the clothes. So I go through the Clip Studio assets, and I found some amazing brushes for doing that. So for working with layers, we have to take in mind that we are going to need to play with the blending modes. Blending modes are like the best option to combine two colors and make it like suitable in order to make the illustrations look good. Basically, you're going to find some to make the image or the color look darker, or the color look like the opposite color, and others are going to add some glow. So playing with the blending modes is something fun. and you have to test how they look on your illustration. So you can go for one without testing the others, because sometimes you can find that another blending mode fits better. It's better or fits better with your drawing. In this case, I am using the air shadow as an example of how the blending mode work. So I am adding like the shadow areas on my air, and you see that I am start like changing the modes, and you see the difference with the colors. Some make the color area that you paint more saturated, others more gray. So that's why it's important you try and play with them. Also, I'm making right now like some air strands in a lighter color, and you see I'm going to change the blending mode to make it more suitable for the background color of my base color. And this is the technique we are going to use to make the lights and the shadows, but it's very important to understand how the blending mode works in order to achieve like the final lighting effect, like the lighting effect and the shadows for making like the full rendered illustration. That's why I think it's important to start playing or knowing the how they work. And I think the best thing for doing that is try and experience and try to put different colors in different layers, and then see how the blending modes work. Even I do that. Even I have been using the blending modes for a long time. Sometimes they tend to work different depending the base color you have or the new color you are trying to blend. So that's why I always, even I know how they work, I know some are darker, some are lighter. I always try each one every time I paint, because sometimes I think that I like how this blending mode can work, but the truth is that sometimes you try another and you see that works much better. And if you see that a color didn't convince you, you can change the color. As I said, working with separate layers let you change the color without problems. So you are not going to touch the other parts of the illustration or anything else. So that's why it's important to see. If you see my layer settings, you see that I have clipping mask, the base layers, the base colors layer, the clipping mask. And also I start working with these color tags to know which one is like my main base color element, which one is like an accessory. I mean, this is like the color code you can do in the Clip Studio Paint layer setting. I find it so useful because when I start working with lots of layers, at some point you get lost, and this marker color, it's so helpful to know which layer is what you are going to use or what you are going to select. This is the last step of our illustration. For making this lighting and shadow effects, we need to duplicate our main shape with the base layer, with the base color we did before. We have to set up on top and change the color to a lilac tone. In my case, it's lilac, but you can try another colors if you want. And then we have to select this shape. And without deselecting it, we are going to start adding new layers and with different blending modes to have like this lighting effect. In other hand, to make more detailed highlights like you see in the face, I am using the oil paint brush that comes with the presets of Clip Studio Paint. And also I am using a yellow tone and switch to the add glow blending mode to make like the paint pop up a little bit and have this effect of highlight light that comes from the light source. And I use this, I paint a lot of, you see the leaves of the clothes, and all that edges that are going to be more in light. So guys, you're going to have all this information in more detail and will explain with images below. And you see I'm continuing adding some highlights in the leaves here. Also in the air, you see that the color, I'm using the Glow Dodge blending mode, and you see that the color comes more vibrant. And this is because we have like the darker layer set to multiply. This layer function is to let us have more contrast between our base colors and the highlights. Because of this color, lilac color, the image is going to be darkened. So this is the function of this layer. And basically we have our illustration done at that point. The last thing I'm going to do is merge all the visible layers in a new layer. This is an option that comes with Clip Studio Paint, and it's amazing. In this new merged layer, we are going to make some color corrections to make our drawing or the colors looking better. And this is all for this part. And of course, you can check all the process in detail down below. And this is all for the coloring part in this stage. As I said, I have an extra here, and I decided to paint again the same drawing with the watercolor brushes, the realistic watercolor brushes that comes with Clip Studio Paint, that I said they are amazing, and you are going to see it right now. I hope you find something interesting in this tutorial in order to work more fluent in Clip Studio Paint. It was a pleasure for me to make it and to show you how I work and how my process looks like. Wish you a nice day and hope we are going to see us again very soon. Bye bye, guys.